The last season of Castlevania was released a while ago, so I took it upon myself to rewatch the whole series, and I gotta say it was kinda good. These video game adaptations always tend to be lazy cash grabs for the companies that make them, most of them having the quality of the straight-to-DVD action movies. So, it's nice for a change that there's actually that competent and well-made series based on a video game franchise. Castlevania has good characters, great animation, and it can be invested even in its more questionable moments. The relationship between the three protagonists held a lot of story together, as their dynamic made it very fun to watch how they play off each other. The rest of the supporting cast also had their own plotlines and character arcs that carried the series throughout its runtime, with someone like Dracula and Isaac being some of the most interesting people in the show. The animation is smooth and stylish, being very apparent that it was influenced by anime and its aesthetics. This helps the fight scenes be even more energetic than they already are, what if all the swords and vampires and magic flying across the screen. Personally, I really like when Sypha uses her magic, because every time she does, there's always some crazy effects that includes different animation techniques from that of the series norm. Pretty fucking cool, especially in the later seasons when they go nuts on the animation. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop the show from having many issues, mainly with the plot. You can see the writer has this tendency of ignoring certain plot lines and character arcs, which both breaks on what otherwise could be a compelling story. In the first two seasons, it's less notable, but when you get to the later ones, season 4 in particular, it becomes rather jarring how blatantly ignored their own story threads. Despite these big hiccups in storytelling, Castlevania still remains a very enjoyable watch for anyone who likes dark fantasy action shows. I'll be going into spoilers to explain my opinion more in depth, so if you want to go in blind, I suggest you skip to this timestamp. You've been warned. Skip now, please. Season 1 is a good introduction to the world of Castlevania, seeing as how it's the length of a short movie. The whole series was actually planned as a direct-to-video film trilogy back in 2007 when Frederator Studios, the animation studio behind TV shows like Freddy Odd Parents and Adventure Time, acquired the adaptation rights, but production spent years in development hell until Netflix stepped up as the show's distributor. Given this different approach to producing, the 80-minute season mostly concerns itself in introducing most of the main characters of the show. Trevor Belmont, a drunk wanderer who is the last member of a monster hunting dynasty, Sypha Bernardes, a kind magician for the Speakers, a nomadic clan of scholars, and Alucard Tepesh, the half-vampire, half-human son of Dracula and Lisa Tepesh. It's kind of fun to say Tepesh. Tepesh! All of them seek to stop Dracula's genocidal plan of killing all humans in Wallachia after the murder of his wife by Christian fundamentalists, find cultists and the King of Vampires army along the way. Seeing as how it's purposeful to be a setup for the larger scale sequel, the season may come across more as a preview for what's to come, a setup really. The plot is simple with the characters moving on the same tracks most of the time. Dracula wants to kill everybody, Trevor wants to save the Speakers, Sypha wants to save everybody, and Alucard is taking a nap. Compared to later seasons with their political schemes that interconnect the storylines, season 1 is definitely beat each other up for the hell of it. And it's not like there's anything wrong with that, it just makes it hard to understand what makes Castlevania great later. The action is exciting and showcases the versatility of the animation, managing to switch between common brawling moves to crazy sword fights. Of course, there's also the whip animation. They could have fucked up so easily there, but the animators made the whip look and feel like it could be a formidable weapon in real life, in contrast to its use as a long road for Indiana Jones wannabes. Ow. The dialogue, on the other hand, it's not that it's bad, but it also ain't good. There are many instances where someone would say something and then repeat what they said later. While in small doses it's serviceable, it can get annoying real fast when the characters are just talking about nothing important for minutes on end, something which comes back to bite the show in the ass. Also, the writer has the tendency of a 13-year-old of sprinkling random swears on the dialogue so that it sounds edgy and adult.
Cyclops. Right out of the family bestiary. Go chasing my dinner once again.
Godbrand, wait!
I'm not gonna fuck you, Carmilla. I'm too pissed off.
Sir Mira, do not allow this one to call me again, and go to sleep.
Fuck you.
Sounds more out of place sometimes, though it doesn't ruin the moment most of the time. Season 1 is a basic showcase of what the series is about, which may or not give you everything you need to enjoy it. If you like it and decide to stick around, then Season 2 is where things get interesting. After waking up Alucard from his beauty sleep, the main trio need to find a way to get in Dracula's castle to kill him before it's too late. However, they're not the only ones getting in Dracula's way. Inside his war castle, there are vampire generals conspiring against him, such as Godbrand, a rowdy Viking that constantly questions Dracula's genocide, and Carmilla, an ambitious queen from Styria who has more subtle ways of influencing court politics in the castle, especially those involving the Forge Masters who create the monsters of Dracula's army, Hector and Isaac. The fun part about all these new characters popping up is that they're all good. Each one have their own goals and personalities that are developed and explored throughout the runtime, even with people who don't do much, like Godbrand. There was a lot of attention given to the relations between the Vampire Court, arguably making them more of the main characters of the season instead of the main trio, seeing as how most of the time they're in the Belmont Library researching how to get the Dracula. Not that they don't get any love. The dynamic between the three is like two very deadly children who hate each other trying to control themselves in front of their teenage babysitter who also shoots fireballs. The time in the library also helps to work on their relationship, so it's not like it's filler. The rest of the show also got much better. The animation production got bumped up so everything's much more pleasant to watch, the score is more diverse, including some remixed tracks from the games, the fight scenes are much more creative and vibrant, especially with the final battle at Dracula's castle. They even worked on the pacing, expanding from 4 episodes to 8 and slowly building up the stakes into the last third of the season. Some people have complained about the pacing, saying that it had a very slow start into the last episodes. I understand where it's coming from. Some of the middle episodes can drag a bit, again with the trio in the library and all the plotting inside Dracula's court. I still think that was a good idea to have a slow build up into the quick-based climax, cause then it helps create more tension for the eventual fight, you know what I mean? Also helps that Season 2 is when Castlevania is at its best. When push comes to shove, Season 3 appears. After killing Dracula, Trevor and Cypher went eventually across Wallachia to reach the town of Lindenfeld, where a cult of Dracula worshipping priests are causing trouble for the town's main authority, the Judge. To complicate things further, a strange traveler called Saint Germain has his own goals involving the Priory, the nature of which holds consequences for the whole universe. Meanwhile, Alucard sits to guard both the castle and the Belmont Hold, growing lonelier by the day until he meets 2 aspiring vampire hunters, Suki and Taka, who want to learn how to more effectively kill vampires. The timing couldn't be better, as the power vacuum left by Dracula's death has allowed vampires like Carmilla to expand their horizons, aiming to create a country-sized human pen for Sir City Castle. Only thing stopping them is the lack of an army, something that could be provided by an enslaved Hector if only they, more specifically the diplomat of the group Lenore, could convince them to make neck creatures. Unbeknownst to them, Isaac survived the battle in the castle and is now building an army to get revenge on both Carmilla and Hector for their betrayal. A lot of stuff happening at the same time, and at first, it's as good as Season 2, but then they have to wrap up the stories. The biggest problem with Season 3 is that the writer has very deep pockets where he stores all his many bad ideas on how to write the plot. Overall, I think they all could be summed up in 2 categories: too dark and too stupid.
What the fuck is toilet paper?
The too dark side involves the Lindenfeld plotline, where the whole town is murdered to resurrect Dracula and the judge is revealed as a serial killer who kills children. Saint Germain disappears and the Infinite Corridor, this interdimensional gateway where his lover/friend/ Beatrice is stuck in, and Trevor and Cypher leave the town bitter and sad. Now, there's nothing wrong with that on paper. In fact, I don't mind this darker in the story. The problem is with the judge because there was no reason for him to be a serial killer. It brings nothing to the plot but additional angst milking. The could have just left him as an ally to do and left it there. Weren't the villagers doing the sacrificial can enough? On the too stupid side, Alucard's storyline ends with him becoming more like his father by sticking the shit out of Suki and Taka. Why? Because after showing only a little distrust of Alucard for not showing everything he knows immediately, they decide the best course of the best course of action is to honey trap him, tie him to his bed, and try to kill him. Cause paranoia or something. Seemed to with the judge, the does this for his own sake, and it's even worse because it makes Alucard's storyline completely pointless. If they just stuck with Alucard training the next generation of vampire hunters, it could have been better. Or if they foreshadowed the twist better instead of plopping in our laps like what shit. The rest of the story involving Carmilla, Hector, Isaac, they're all good, but they're also all set up. This whole season was supposed to be the setup for the next one, and when half the plotlines don't work, you have a major problem in the future. It can easily push people away from watching the rest of Castlevania, which, I mean, they ain't losing a lot seeing as how the 4th season is also his last. Originally, Castlevania was planned to have 5 seasons instead of 4, but seeing as how COVID scrambled everyone's plans, they decided to end it early. 6 weeks has passed since the end of the last season. Trevor and Cypher are tracking down more and more of Dracula's cultists, while Alucard finds a new town needing protection from the night creatures. Besides that, Carmilla and Cass are currently struggling with their war effort, as tensions between the group are rising. Not helping the matter is that Isaac is finally ready to take on Carmilla, and their plans of conquest before they can even get started properly. Very exciting stuff, and when I watched it for the first time, I thought it was an improvement on Season 3. It's not that it didn't have its own problems. The pacing slowed down a lot, the dialogue got more repetitive, and they just straight up ignored many of the plot threads from the last season, so Season 3 is even more useless. But they also made the animation way better, the fight scenes are incredible, and they managed to bring a satisfying conclusion to basically every storyline, worse than all. While it didn't reach the heights of Season 1 and 2, it was still a decent experience that I enjoyed. Then I rewatched it. In hindsight, throwing away seasons worth of build-up and rushing the whole project in was a very bad idea. Because there's no natural flow between storylines, the whole thing feels empty and pointless, many plot threads weathering out into nothing. For starters, Trev and Sypha. They fight around fighting vampires and night creatures until they arrive in Dragovishti, where Elisa Tepesh was killed. They try helping the survivors of the city, contending with the incompetent Headguard Zamfir, until they are attacked by the main vampires that are trying to resurrect Dracula. The battle kills a lot of the city, and Trevor and Sypha fuck off to finish the fight in Dracula's castle. Is Dragovishti gonna be okay? Hell, will the city folks survive on their own? Yeah, no, who cares? You don't matter. But now, back to Alucard. After 6 weeks moping and being a cunt, he decides to be his heroic self again when a nearby village called for help. And he just is his old self. There isn't any arc where he relearns how to trust people. Nope, he's just old Alucard. It's fine. I guess his story was one of the worst parts of Season 3 anyway. But then, who else would show up but Saint Germain, who is now evil and trying to resurrect Dracula after a quick montage? No. I don't care how much you test your character motivations around and their personalities, if you just let they're a whole nother person without developing them, then you just have character assassination. They even budget the rest of the characters' arcs. The Cassus War doesn't even look like war, for one. There's one short battle, and at that point the entire council, except Carmilla, is sick to ordeal. They didn't even use Hector's Forge Master abilities, which makes his entire relationship with Lenore even more awkward. It still kinda works, but it's just because they have a good dynamic. The writer put some acrobatics to change a manipulative relationship based on Hector being a slave for Lenore to a friendship based on snark combat, so it's a miracle they still feel like a real relationship. They even retconned the purpose of Hector's slave ring. The point of the ring was to submit Hector to Lenore's and by extension the council's control. So what does he do in Season 4? Just goes off? Why didn't he do this before? Why doesn't the slave ring stop him from doing the first thing many would think of doing when there is something dangerous on their finger? No clue. But the character they ruined the most was Isaac. Not that he did the twist in 180s of previous characters, no. Isaac's arc actually makes sense, even if it was a bit rushed and jumped a few development scenes. The problem with Isaac is that he barely appears in the season. He shows up in one episode, building his army and relaxing, then in episode 6, he invades Styria, kills Carmilla, and ends her war. That's it. The conclusion to the stories was way too quick and should have been more developed. It's a frustrating experience when you stop and think about what's happening on screen. But, with that said, I wouldn't say the last 2 seasons ruined the whole series. It's not on the level of The Rise of Skywalker or Game of Thrones Season 8. Castlevania offers a ton of action and drama that keeps you entertained throughout the whole show. I would recommend committing to the first 2 seasons if you want to see the best parts that are the most consistent, and then if you're interested, watch the second half. You'll enjoy it more that way. There's even plans for a spin-off revolving around Trevor's and Sypha's descendant in the French Revolution, so if you're interested, you can check it out when it's out.